Recording in progress.
All right, everybody, if we could call this meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee to order. This is a Thursday, March 9th committee meeting. Taylor, any public comment today? Okay, no public comment. We do have a couple changes to the agenda, which I'd like to go over now. The first would be, I'd like to add to the agenda the liaison appointment for the Strategic Tourism Planning Board. If there's no objections, we'll add that under advisory board appointments. Seeing no objections, I'd also like to add to the agenda resolution ID 11547 entitled Support for New York's Raise the Wage Act. Senate bill is referencing 1978A and the Assembly Bill 2204A. A copy of the resolution and the Senate bill have been provided and are your desks. If there's no objections to adding this to the...
Do we need to move that?
Not if there's not an objection. So if there's not objection, we'll add this under committee members' reports, as this was a resolution submitted by Legislator Koreman and Pillar. I would also like to add to the agenda discussion with George McGonigal, Cynthia Brock, and Mike Thorne from the city of Ithaca regarding the homeless encampments in the city of Ithaca. Based on scheduling conflicts and their flexibility coming today, if we could put this right under advisory board appointments, I'd appreciate that. If seeing no objection, we'll put that there. And then also, just as a note, the resolution ID 11534 entitled Calling for the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to address the lack of cell phone coverage for unserved and underserved areas has been provided and is on your desk, and the original NISAC resolution has also been attached. All right, does any other members of the committee have any changes to the agenda? Nope, that's a full slate, so appreciate it. The minutes of February 1st, 2023 meeting have attached. Is there somebody to move those for approve? Moved by Travis, seconded by Ann. All those in favor? Great, that passes unanimously. The next item is an advisory board appointment, ID 11526. This is for Jason Seidel, TC3 representative. Term expires December 31st, 2023. And you should all have received that advisory board appointment. Could I have somebody move that? Moved by Travis, seconded by Veronica. All those in favor? All right, the next one is I would also like to ask Mike Sigler, and Mike has agreed to serve as the liaison to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, the liaison of the legislature. So if I could have, I'd like to move that. If I could have a second. Seconded by Travis. Any discussion?
I just want to say what a terrific move this is on your part. Really shows leadership. So.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I can always count on you.
I'd like to debate that, but just because we have so many things on the agenda,
for the sake of time,
I'll do that after.
It's best we move on, Ann.
Right.
All right, well, seeing no real discussion, all those in favor? Great. All right, Mike, we appreciate that and look forward to you joining the STPB meetings. Okay, well, we moved through numbers 1 through 5 rather quickly. Appreciate that. I guess now I'd like to open the conversation up with the folks from the city of Ithaca. This was kind of impromptu, kind of last minute. Came out of Tuesday's conversation, which we always appreciate when George comes to provide updates to the legislature. And we had extended the invitation, George, and you had graciously accepted and brought with you also Councilperson Cynthia Brock and Mike Thorne, who's the director of the City of Ithaca Department of Public Works. What we'd like to do in this setting is really open the dialogue between the city and the Housing and Economic Development Committee as a number of the aspects of the homeless issue within the community have been now tasked to our committee, and wanted to make sure that as you are moving forward with plans in the city, we keep those conversation dialogues open. We play a role in helping shape that and try to best understand what the city's vision is for how the county plays a role and how we can work together. So I guess I would turn it over to you and your colleagues, and then I'll open it up to members of the legislature for any questions they might have.
Thanks, Greg. So I guess the focus of what we're doing right now is we're trying to establish an encampment with services and with plumbing and heat and various things to make it a more comfortable place to live. And we're very close to being at the point where we're going to put out an RFP for a contractor to manage this. We're taking it year by year. We're starting out very simple. The idea is to have some contractor trailer type buildings in place that would have heated showers and sinks and flush toilets and a space for service providers to operate. My colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, the city is going to prepare the site. It'll take quite a bit to get water from where it ends up at the edge of the site into the site. It'll probably have to be underground. And we are talking about maybe some fencing to protect some of these buildings and to discourage vandalism. And what we're hoping from the county is to partner with us once these things are established in terms of providing services and paying for the ongoing oversight of the site. And once we get a little farther along, it won't be very long before we are there, we'll be eager to share with the county what our ideas are and listen to what your suggestions are. But we haven't even shared these ideas with full council yet, so we want to do that first.
Mike, if you
Yeah, the intent would just be to have it as a pilot this year. We wouldn't run it through the winter time. We don't think there's funding, and I think what we're hoping to do is be able to run it for several months and learn some lessons, because I'm sure we will learn quite a few lessons from this. But the buildings, I want to lower everyone's expectations. A lot of them, I think, in the affordability range might end up being construction-type trailers, I think George mentioned, and they do have mobile shower and restroom units, and so those are kind of what we're looking at and think would fit within the budget. We're still developing an RFP and a city policy, but we're getting closer.
Great. Cynthia, anything else to add?
Not at this moment, no.
Okay, all right. I guess I'll open it up to members of our committee. Travis?
So I guess a few questions. I'll just start with a few and then we'll get the conversation going. At some point, an RFP is going out. At some point, there'll be a conversation with the county about expectations, what the county would be willing to put in or what the ask is. Is it, I guess, for me, is it possible to have some sort of understanding, some sort of agreement on what's expected from the county, what the county agrees to do before an RFP goes out? What I would hate to have happen, George, you at the last meeting we talked about, I think it was Health and Human Services, about refunding or refunding the city for the cost of the dump, right? And so part of the conversation was we got hit with the bill before we agreed to pay for the bill. So what I would hate to see happen is for things to move along on the city side, the ask come to the county, and then for folks from the legislature to say, well, we made all these plans, these are the expectations from the county, and we didn't agree to these things beforehand. I just want to avoid that and figure out if we can come to some understandings, have that discussion, and then put out the RFP and move forward so there's no surprises from anybody later. Or you're not expecting the county to do one thing, and then we say, hey, we never said we would do that, and we don't. I want the process to be as smooth as possible, moving forward. So this thing, whatever it looks like, everybody knows what they're getting into and what the expectations are from everybody.
I agree 100%. That's why we're here. Yeah, we want to work at this together.
Veronica or Ann, any questions?
So I'm just wondering, a bunch of things, and I'm glad, Travis brought that part up about, and maybe that was kind of common sense, but we wanted to put that out there, that we want to be included. We want to look at, what the county can provide. I mean, we provide health and human services type things, would that be some of the, our contribution? Would it be paying for some of the stuff? So there's just a myriad of things that I want to look at, and, and also look at things about, as the site is being cleaned up, for instance, plans on how to address that going forward to try and be preventative so that doesn't, keep happening.
I'll just answer part of that for myself. Cleanup costs definitely be on the table. Human services, I think the county's doing that now for people who live in the jungle, and that's part of what the county does. Yes. So I would think we'd be talking about other things, being aware of the fact that it should be easier to provide those services if this encampment is successful, because people will be at this location, and there'll be fewer people in locations that are inaccessible.
I don't know if you have the answer to this question yet, but is this like short term, like like something that's going to help for now, and also part of the longer, how does this fit into the longer term? But maybe the longer term isn't there yet. I don't know.
Like Mike said, we're going to learn through this process, but what we've been talking about for a couple years now is a place that may be there for several years, but the people who live there will kind of get a leg up, and it'll be very low barrier, almost no barrier, and then we'll move on to more permanent housing. Do you understand? So it'll be temporary, hopefully, for the people, but it may not be temporary as a sanctioned encampment, but we don't know yet.
I'm going to go to Cynthia real quick, and then Mike, I'll come back to you.
Obviously, this is in process right now. The way I think about this is it's a two-pronged approach, right? We're trying to provide a safe, supportive space for those who are living unhoused, because the long-term solution to homelessness is housing, as you know, and we don't have housing yet. We don't have permanent supportive housing yet. And so we do need a space for those who are either unable or unwilling to access housing. So first of all, this pilot program of this supportive space where people can be while we are seeking more permanent solutions. In addition, not to be forgotten is also the development of a policy of how do we support individuals who have not moved into this space, who, again, unwilling or to desire to move into this space. And that's also something that we will need partnership with the county to do. So as you mentioned, right, the county provides services. The policy action, I think, will only be effective if we have everyone on board with front-loading that support service to those who are living unhoused, to get them access to services, to engage with them regularly, to support them, and encourage them to go to a safe, official space for them to be, rather than in these disparate campsites in areas where camping, for a better term, is not allowed in the city. So in my mind, the way I see the county providing support is to provide a clear and direct message to our outreach workers and our service providers that this is the commitment of the county and the city, that to move people away from these unsupported spaces into supportive spaces. So having that clear message is one buy-in that I would like to request. Obviously, we would hope that once areas have been cleared and people have found a more supportive space, to keep those spaces cleared. Obviously, that will entail environmental cleanup, which is something that the county can assist us with. And other services that would support both this pilot sheltered space program, supported camping space program, and the policy program is, in my view, what we are looking for from the county. And some of that will come from in-kind services or maybe a cash contribution in one form or another. But we won't know until I think we receive feedback from the RFP what these applicants think that this will cost them as well. So we'll have a better idea, I think, of budgets and what we can support.
Lisa, I see your hand.
Thanks, Greg. As Travis said, I think knowing about this on the front end is great and helps us to be able to be a better partner. One question that I have that I can't answer, but I'm thinking about the county's obligations on the kind of the regulatory side around the health department and sanitation and potable water, and if as part of the city's process is to start offering those services, does that then mean our Department of Whole Health is then obligated to do regulation of those services? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that I think would be helpful to be aware of on the front end rather than the back end. So.
I have Mike and then Travis. Or Travis, go ahead. Mike gave you the, go first.
So I heard cleanup costs as something. Would the city be asking for money towards the build out, toward the services for the provider afterwards?
I'm thinking, I'm speaking for myself, I'm thinking that we would be asking for help with paying for the services of this provider who keeps track of the encampment. Yes.
But not the build out or the build out too? I know it's not a lot going there, but there is some cost associated with it.
Sure. The way we're envisioning it right now, and again, once the RFP and the policy are kind of vetted a little bit more by the city, that would certainly be something that's shared. But the initial thinking is very mobile, temporary facilities that have a cost to them. There's a rental cost, of course, and then there would also be some staff costs for somebody to just manage it and make sure the garbage is picked up, or, you know, regular trash service is picked up. Electricity setup services with NYSEG to bring power out there to these trailers and things like that. Cynthia said a lot of what I was going to say, but I think, you know, as we all know, permanent supportive housing is what's needed, but that may be 5 to 10 years off. And so there needs to be some sort of intermediate step. And this is sort of a pilot for an intermediate step, if you like. I think we're looking at probably writing the RFP in a way that it's monthly services, because we're not sure exactly how far the money will go at this point. That'll depend on what type of bids we get back. And we may decide to run it longer or shorter, depending on what those monthly rates are. Or if it's too short, maybe, you know, see if we could all agree to extend it at some point. But a lot of it is just kind of to see what sort of things are we going to learn about even trying to have a intermediate area that is safer and more sanitary and maybe more consolidated for, say, emergency services or outreach workers to meet in one place rather than, you know, several campsites throughout the city or the county. Right. If it could all be consolidated, there would certainly be some efficiencies there. We know it probably won't run smoothly, but we'll learn from that.
And I definitely get the need. I sat with George and Cynthia as we worked on tides. I understand the need. I supported tides. And one of the things that I said over and over again is we need to figure out what the ask is, right? We keep having this conversation, and we need to figure out what the ask is, because that's really what it comes down to. And what are we asking each municipality, or I guess the city and the county, what are we asking for them to pony up to make this happen? So that's why I was asking those questions. It's not because I don't support something, because I do. I've been supporting something temporary and something far more permanent. But I do know, just from the simple discussion of the garbage, right, and the dump fees, the big question is, what is going to be the total ask from the county to put in? Services is one thing, but what is the cost going to be for the county? What does that look like? Are we asking people to submit an RFP for 24-hour management for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day? You know, those are some things that I wonder about. Tides was like, you know, it was very different in the approach, and so this is an approach, and I had a better idea of what we were asking for, obviously, because I was working with the group for tides. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what this could look like and what the cost may be as we talk about it as a legislature.
I'm going to go to Cynthia real quick to maybe chime in on that. Is that where your hand was for?
Yeah, so I'm laughing. This is not tides. It's not. Because if it were tides, it would directly address Lisa Holmes' point, right? Tides was in its proposal to be and meet all the requirements of a licensed campsite. This is not that. And so you said that, and of course it clicked. And I think that we definitely need to sit down with the county before any RFP goes out to make sure that we could meet our health department requirements with regards to something like this, because it's not tides. It's not even close. Yeah. So there's a lot of regulatory aspects to this that need to be addressed. And I hope that we could include Lisa and individuals from the Department of Health to address that.
So if I could take just a quick point of personal privilege. I think, Cindy, something you said there, we need to sit down with the county before the RFP goes out. I think that's really what everybody's getting at, to make sure that we are in alignment and on the same page. And I think you should have a lot of, pride and personal fulfillment, knowing that you're taking a step and taking action in the city and doing something and trying to put pen to paper and come up with a solution and solve the issues at hand. So I appreciate that, but I just know that when it comes to dollars and cents and services provided, especially taxpayer dollars that are being put into this, community dollars, there's a lot of folks that want to make sure that it's flushed out. And I realize that it likely won't be a perfect solution, that there'll be some trial and error, and I think that's okay, right? I think that's okay to take a step to learn from it, but we also have to make sure that it checks some of the boxes we have to check as municipalities, right? As stewards of public, monies and things like that. So I think that's really key, and I think the point of this is really just to make sure that the city doesn't take steps that then have to sort of come back to the county, because we want to be a partner in this and not a roadblock, but we do want to make sure that we can work through some of those challenges that may arise, and that there's clarity on what the expectations may be. And if we're going to be a partner in this, that we can also maybe help set the expectation of any of the service providers that we may be asked to fund or administer or partner with. So those are my, I guess, cent and a half. Go to Mike and then George. Or no,
Veronica?
sorry, Veronica.
No, I wasn't directly responding to that, but I've got questions later.
Maybe go to Mike and then go back to Veronica.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think, Travis, you were trying to get a ballpark idea of what we're looking at here. And what we're looking at is doing sort of a monthly rate to do these buildings. And, we kind of did some rough back of the envelope calculations, but we're assuming it will probably be around the $20,000 a month range. Could be higher, could be lower. We just don't know. But that would include rental costs, utility costs, and minimal staffing. And so that's, you asked a really good question. Is this a 24/7 hour staffing, or is it a 40-hour a week with security fencing? Those are the things that we're still trying to figure out. But that's kind of the ballpark range.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Mike Sigler real quick because I've skipped him a couple of times. I apologize, Mike. So go ahead.
I got 7 questions.
All right. Take your time.
Question 1. So you're envisioning this as like a campsite. So will there be camping allowed anywhere else, or is this just at what we would traditionally call the jungle? Or
The idea is to encourage people to come to this site. There will be sites like the site we've already cleaned up where camping will be totally discouraged. And we're looking for help from the homeless advocates to keep that area clean and nobody camping there. There will be other places on city property initially where the no trespassing, no camping rules will not be enforced. So this will not be the only place on city property where camping is allowed, at least this first year.
when you say discouraged, like there's an artesian well over at the one place where people grab water, fresh water to drink. I mean, are we going to cap that, or is
Which place?
the place over by Warehouse Carpet, or formerly Warehouse Carpet?
That's the area where we're not going to permit camping.
Attraction point, right? If I can get fresh water.
Initially, that is probably going to be fenced off.
Okay.
Mike, can you use your mic a little closer? Sorry.
Oh, sure,
Hard to
sorry.
hear.
Okay. Number two, people that started constructing buildings, we're not letting people do that in this new camping area, I would assume, or are we going to let people do that? By building, I mean like a shack. Like there was one in the jungle now that has a shack and it has a generator. I mean, I've got to imagine we're going to clear that out, or are we not going to help you clear that out, or?
I don't think we have any plans to dictate the type of structure people live in near this area in Southwest.
I mean, I'm wondering, just because, I mean, none of that meets safety building code, nothing. I mean,
Well, hello?
build a shack, yeah, I would think that's a
The
problem.
jungle does not meet any of these requirements.
Well, but you're trying to make it so it does.
We're trying to make it safer and cleaner.
Okay. All right. Security, that's going to be part of the RFP, I guess. Because, I mean, even the people that live in the jungle feel like there are no police around to help them, so.
Security wasn't anticipated in this.
The housing comes back to my other question. Is there going to be like, I assume somebody's going to bring a tent. Is there like, I guess there isn't an approved, like, it has to be this kind of tent or anything? I guess I'm wondering.
No, it doesn't have to come from LLB. in
I don't mean
particular.
that. I mean, I'm trying to convey what I mean here. I mean, you can have two different things where it can be like more like a permanent site, whereas you've got people literally setting up housing, or it's like, okay, I need a place to live. Like this one woman lost her apartment. She set up a tent, not from LL Bean, but from Walmart. I guess I'm just wondering what that's going to look like. I guess the generator is a good question too. If you're going to allow things like generators in there, are you going to allow open fire? I mean, I'm not allowed to have an open fire in the city. Are there going to be allowed to have open fires in the jungle? I don't know.
You guys, feel free to help me with this, but.
I don't mean to target you either. Yeah, please.
This is going to be an extremely low barrier living arrangement.
And I get that.
So if somebody has a campfire near their tent, are we going to say you can't do that? No, we are not.
That's not low barrier. Low barrier is you come and you're high as a kite. You need this place to crash, and you're going to set up a tent there, and you want to keep doing drugs. I'm not going to go rouse people in their tent. But if people are starting open-air fires, why can't I do that? Why can't I go to my house down on Court Street? Why can't I go to the park right down on Court Street and set up a fire?
I'm not even going to respond to that.
Why?
I'm going to sort of maybe rein this in and give a little bit of a time cap to our conversation. Mike, not to cut you off, I do understand those are valid concerns. Those are concerns represented by members within the community, and they are part of addressing the bigger issue, right? It may not be in steps 1, 2, or 3. Maybe that's in step 4 or 5, but we have to take steps towards a solution, in my opinion.
I'm understanding that, but are you going to set up a book of rules before you?
I also want to encourage the relationship between the county and the city, and not have our city colleagues feel like they're on the hot seat. So I do think there obviously there's concern, there's questions, and I think we are just asking to make sure that we're a part of those solutions. That if there's a desire for us to participate, right, we're part of that conversation. If the city says, hey, you know what, we're going to take this on all on our own, we wish you well. But if there's a desire for engagement, we want to be part of that conversation. And I also think we can't be a barrier to the steps that are necessary to make incremental improvement and to try something to see if it works, to learn from that. But Mike, if do you have any other pertinent questions? Because what I've heard today from our folks at the
Listen, I'm not trying to be a barrier.
No, I know you're not.
I'm saying that the city has certain codes, and those certain codes are meant for the safety of the people that are living here. And these people are living here. And I can't have people living in shacks. You guys can, I don't know who can. But if you're going to have people living in shacks that then burn down and they have to be dragged out of to save their life because they're in thank God somebody saw that fire. That woman would have been dead. There's no fire alarm. There's no electric. You can't even get back there with a fire truck. So that's my question.
Yeah.
There's
a lot to do on this topic for sure. And there's a lot to do. I'm going to go to Veronica because she's been waiting, and then Travis and Cynthia. And then if we could make those sort of closing comments, we can move on with the rest of the agenda.
Sure, I'll try to prioritize. Mike asked some of my questions. There are plenty of open fires in the city too, by the way, that don't get enforced. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So somehow I didn't process at the beginning, do the buildings that you're, or like, buildings, trailers, whatever structures that you're thinking about, would those be places that people could live in or sleep in? Or is it like you come to this area with or without whatever tent type shelter you had in the first place, and inside the structures is things like toilets and showers and whatnot?
The latter.
Okay. And then for when talking about staffing, are you imagining more? It sounds like you're imagining some amount of staffing to sort of maintain the facilities there. Are you also imagining added staff to go provide social services type stuff, or is it more that people who are already doing that would continue to do that, and perhaps they could spend more of their time at this site and less wandering around a broader area?
Right. So staffing, right now, again, we're looking at budgets, what the city has budgeted for this, and what we understand the county is also, there's an equal amount there, so we're trying to fit within that. My thought on staffing is somebody who's going to maintain those facilities, keep them clean, maybe establish rules for hours of operation, that sort of thing, arrange for septic service, cleanup, because there's no sanitary sewer connection. Just maintain it in those ways. Make sure that we have enough dumpsters, to make sure that the dumpsters are collected to pay those bills that would be sent to the city to for payment and such like that. But it would not be trying to fix all the social problems that are out there. It would just be to maintain these specific facilities so that people experiencing homelessness could depend on, a clean shower and restroom facility, or a place, to dump garbage and things like that. So it's a small incremental step. It's better than what exists now. And I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, you totally did. Thank you.
Okay.
I also I love that you're framing this as a pilot program, and I appreciate y'all thinking about the city-county relationship coming here this early in the process, which it sounds like you are. And I'm also glad to hear that it's this idea is not coming coupled with a enforcement of a no camping policy everywhere else. I know that's been, controversial. I've been one of many people opposed to that, but I think it does seem like a good idea. What you're proposing seems like a good idea to try this for a season, see how people do and don't respond to it, and go from there. My last question, I guess noting that it's early in the process, it makes sense that this hasn't happened, but have you or will you work with the outreach workers who do go into the encampments regularly, just to see their thoughts on how people will respond to this kind of site, and or what would and wouldn't seem to work for them in terms of the site you're proposing being a hub where the service providers and the folks living there can connect around services. Did that question make sense?
That's crucial to have the advocates support this. We want as little police presence as possible. We're hoping that we never have to evict somebody from an area through the police. Now, that said, illegal activity, violence, cooking meth, that type of thing is illegal and dangerous, and we're not saying that the police won't be involved in enforcing the law, but we're looking for the advocates to help us with this, and yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
I just wanted to say one other thing, that cities across the country are dealing with this, and they're trying to figure out the best solution. This is not a situation that's unique to Ithaca by any means. And part of our working group, we are looking at best practices. What are other cities doing? What's working for them? What's not? And so we're not trying to reinvent a wheel. We're just trying to fit what other cities are doing, try to make that fit for Tompkins County as best we can. But other cities are, they're trying things and failing in one area or another. So it's an ongoing process to try and figure out what is the best thing to do.
In addition to making this more accessible for social services, it will also be more accessible to the fire department and EMS. So we think those are good things.
We'll go to Travis and then Cynthia, and then we'll wrap up.
I'm not trying to put more work on anybody's plate, but I wonder in these earlier stages, since there is a working group, if it may make sense to, and Lisa could figure out on the county's end, if it makes sense for somebody from the county, from Whole Health, to be involved now, so we don't have to go back and rehash conversations, for folks from the shared county and city outreach workers maybe to be involved now, and even one or two of us from this committee, because I'm thinking it'll be May before you all come back, and then we'll have all this conversation, and it'll be June, right? Before, could even be July, because we only meet once a month. So maybe there are things that could be hashed out, figured out, talked about in between time. So we're not talking about this in September, October, right before we run into code blue. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. So maybe we can speed up this process by having folks meeting with the working group on a regular basis now, so that the communication will be better, and we can work through, all the possibilities earlier on than later.
I see Lisa's hand real quick.
Just to follow up to that I've been informed by county staff that there's already been a reach out from city staff to county staff to make just that happen. So I think it's in the works.
Great. And if you do have, yourselves, or if you have other elected officials on there, if there is maybe an opportunity from a member of our committee or from Health and Human Services Committee from the legislature to partake, as well as county staff, I think to Travis's point, that would be appreciated, so we could, really present this as a sort of one community solution.
Absolutely.
Cynthia?
I appreciate Mike's and Veronica's concerns. If you think about it, like TIDES was the fully fleshed out program, but we missed the opportunity to get funding and apply for funding on behalf of the city to enable TIDES or something similar to it to be in place by the spring, which had been the ideal. So while it falls short of all of the very standards and requirements, Mike, that you have identified, I think we recognize we need to take step 1, 2, and 3, as clumsy and incomplete as they are, to try to make strides moving forward to provide support to those who are living unhoused and support to the neighborhoods and communities to which they reside, right? As I listen and I think through, it might be that here we are, it is March, spring is coming, people are already coming back out into the community. Our hope to have something in place by spring before people got established in places, I think we're already too late maybe, or very late to be able to put these things into place. I hope that we can do something this year, but working towards that more fully fleshed out solution. So again, that we are meeting building code, we're meeting health code, we're meeting our environmental standards, we're providing adequate support and outreach. All of that is going to take time. That might be a year 2 or year 3 realization, but we really welcome the county's support and participation to go through this clumsy year 1 process of just being able to triage and support people who are really living in dire situations. And we thank you for that partnership.
Mike?
I'll be quick. Listen, I think this is actually better than the TIDE suggestion. So I don't want you thinking that I'm all negative about this. I mean, if it was me, right, I would put the showers in a mobile unit that you can put on a trailer them there so that you can trailer them away at night. And then you can secure them someplace. Otherwise, I think they're going to get trashed. But a word was used here earlier, and it was to make people more comfortable. That's not my goal, to make people more comfortable. My goal here would be to make people safer, not more comfortable. Part of the problems with the TIDE was, how do you control people living in a cabin if they overdose? I don't know the answer to that. And it's kind of the same question here is, you don't want people overdosing and dying. You don't want people dying of fire. So yeah, the comfort level, okay, that's as a government, that's not really a big deal for me. I want people to be safe if they're going to be living out of doors, or as safe as they can be. So it's even like, how do you handle if somebody's in there with children? I would think that we would have to go in and say, listen, we got to bring you out and get you some housing. So I guess that's just the nuance out of this discussion. I think that's where if you're going to say, what's the focus? I would say it should be on the latter, not on the other. So.
I think safety can mean a lot of things, and for sure, I think that's a priority. I want to express my appreciation for the 3 of you coming, especially on short notice. Thank you for taking up the invitation. I'm sure this won't be the last time we get together. And just so you know, the chair of the Health and Human Service Committee, Dan Klein, and I have been talking about scheduling a joint committee between HED and HHS just to focus on this issue. And so we'll make sure that we include relevant parties and make that a robust meeting and discussion, and more to come on when that might be. But appreciate your time, and again, please, since you're sort of in that driver's seat right now, let us know where and how we get involved, and what we can do to help.
Thanks for your time and attention, and we will definitely get you involved very soon, because obviously the later in the year we start this, the harder it is to keep people from trying to camp where we don't want them to. So we're shooting for May. Whether that happens or not, we don't know, but that's what we're shooting for.
We got to move quick. All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Good luck at your next meeting.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is under the chair's report. This is resolution. This is a resolution calling for the Federal Communications Commission (FCC) to address the lack of cellular phone coverage for unserved and underserved areas. This was a resolution provided on your desk, ID 11534. This is something I'm actually going to move that. If I could have a seconder. Seconded by Ann Koreman. This was a resolution that I put forward that came out of our NISAC meeting. This was something that was adopted by the folks at NISAC, and this, definitely is just making a statement that says we support NISAC's resolution, but also that we would ask that the FCC do its part to make sure that there's adequate funding and resource available to make sure that we have cell phone coverage in the areas that need it most. There's obviously a number of safety concerns, I know, and we've talked at length about certain areas in the county that you've experienced that, and the need for emergency personnel. So that's really the gist of this resolution, but I'll open it up for discussion if there is any, or comment. Ann?
Just, I want to thank you, Greg, for bringing this forward. I'm happy to vote for this. I just had one little manifest thing. It's just like in the last, or maybe it's the only resolve. Yeah, the last, on the first page at the bottom, so I guess that'd be the first resolved. Just wondering if you thought after HED that change it to that the Tompkins County and then add the word legislature joins New York State versus Tompkins County.
Oh, so add legislature to the,
So the before Tompkins
Yeah, the
County and
Tompkins
then
County.
legislature after Tompkins County and then just change join to joins.
I find that friendly as the mover, you as the seconder, obviously. Is there any objection to that amendment? Taylor, you got that? Okay. That change is made. Any other comments or discussion? Great, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. Next, we'll go on to the county administrator's reports. Lisa, you've got the action-packed resolution for us, so go ahead.
Right in. Okay, in your packet, there is a resolution related to IAED, authorizing the county administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding. Maybe if you want to.
Yeah, so I guess I will, I'll jump in again. So the resolution to authorize the county administrator execute a memorandum of understanding with the Ithaca Area Economic Development for Economic Development, IAED Services, ID 11532. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Ann Koreman. We'll now, I guess, open it up for Lisa for discussion.
So in your packet, there was the resolution as well as a background memo and the relevant sections of the MOU. The background memo kind of spells out, this is the culmination of the work of the IAED task force that was charged by PDAC back in 2022 to evaluate the county's interest to provide direct, substantial, ongoing financial support to IAED for economic development services. The abridged version is that the county is coming to the end of their 5-year MOU with IAED at the end of 2023, and as part of IAED's funding structure, and they do a long-range plan and a 5-year, get 5-year commitments from investors as well as the county, and it was time for us as the county to evaluate the return on investment, so to speak, from IAED for their services and talk about whether we want to embark on another 5-year MOU. So the task force, which was made up of several legislators, county staff members, an IAED board member, a couple of representatives from the IDA, convened and had 4 meetings and discussions, and the results you can see here. There was broad consensus that the group wants very much to continue with the 5-year MOU between the county and IAED, and that the funding should continue from the county to the IAED through tax levy support as opposed to hotel room occupancy taxes, which was the method for funding years ago, and over the last several years we've gotten away from that to be solely supporting through tax levy. Considering the county's contribution to IAED, the group recommends that the county make up 25% of the membership of the executive committee, which is tasked with oversight of the IAED's budget. That in real terms raises would raise our number of seats on the executive committee from 1 to 2 out of 8 total seats. And then there was a lot of discussion about the amount of support that the county provides to IAED and how that has changed over the years, proportionately has decreased over the years. The funding model had been roughly a third of IAED support comes from the county, a third from investors, and a third from IDA fees. Over a number of years, the county's support had decreased as IAED's budget increased, and particularly around the bringing on a workforce development staff person. Our share declined from about 22% to 24% of the budget. So the task force recommends an attempt to gradually increase the county's funding based on the 2023 budget, trying to get that amount up to higher, recognizing that budget is going to change and will never be exactly at a 1/3 mark, but that was somewhat of the goal. So, and rather than trying to have that change take place all in 1 year, we recommended the gradual approach over a 5-year period. And then lastly, a recommendation that if there are other economic development projects identified, the mechanism to consider them if IAED proposes taking them on, to come to the county for an over-target request, either a one-time or an ongoing permanent addition. So that's the summary of the recommendations of the task force. Annie was on the task force. Nick served on the task force. I believe, Katie and Jennifer were also on the task force. And happy to answer questions. And yes, that's it.
I guess I'll open it up to any comments or questions from committee members. Yeah, I also too, Heather McDaniel's with us here in the gallery, I guess we'd say. If Heather, if you have anything that you'd like to add, or if you're just here observing, that's by all means, don't feel any pressure to chime in. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thanks, Greg. You know me, I can talk a lot about IAED. I love the work that we do. I just want to thank the county for your task force and your process. I was at the first meeting and gave a presentation of, our work and our metrics and how we impact this community in terms of new property tax base, new jobs with very high average wages, our workforce development program, our loan program, managing the industrial development agency, and really helping businesses to start here, stay here, and grow here. So I thought it went very well, and I have not been involved in any of the other committee deliberations. Of course, I've answered lots of questions for Lisa, and she's been generous with her time and keeping me updated on the process. And, I presented this to IAED's executive committee, of which Lisa sits on, and overall we're grateful and thankful for your support and your partnership. So thank you for this process, and I look forward to continued partnership.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Ann?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was happy we got to, pretty good consensus too about increasing, the amount. And I really appreciate, IAED and of course your Heather, giving us information from the beginning and along the process. And so I hope this helps kind of, strengthen our relationship. I think it's a good relationship already, but, help strengthen it and help, keep continued communication like we're having now, and helping support the programs that you're doing.
Yeah, I think, one, I want to just express my thanks to everybody who served on the task force, is what it was called. I know that there was some bumps in the road getting that through peak and getting that going, but it looks like everything turned out for the best, and I do appreciate the county, recommitting the importance of economic development within our community and the role that IAED plays in that. I think that we have a wide open space of opportunity ahead of us as we look towards workforce development and new enterprise and all that type of stuff. So I hope we can continue this effort, and if there are opportunities for further additional funding, that Heather, you'll definitely flag those and let us know through the over target request process, so that if we need to make further investment in the community in that way, we can be supportive. If there's no other.
One more thing. We did have a member of the public, Don Barber, who's on the food systems plan, send a couple of us an email asking that the food systems plan be part of our negotiations with you, and I think it was Dan who responded that, we didn't really think that it should be part of your plan, so this was just a couple of days ago. But I just wanted to put that out there, that, that Don Barber wants us to think about food systems and a lot of, economic things, and I would kind of pass that on to our committee. It is food systems plan itself is something that Peak is going to be focusing on, though. But of course, a lot of things overlap from the two committees.
Yeah, I think we've kind of been a birthplace of a number of food industry, things like that. I think that there's a way to think about agriculture and food system components and what role that plays in our local economy. And I know that Heather's team is definitely open to probably, all good new opportunities for growth within our community. So I'm going to call this one to a vote. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. So I guess, Lisa, you're now authorized to engage after the legislature adopts that at our next legislature meeting. All right, the next one we have on the, thanks, Heather, appreciate your time as well. The next one we have is, we always do these ones in fun order. Authorize a public hearing on proposed law number B of 2023, amend Article 27 of the County Charter, ID number 11472. Somebody move that. Ann moves that. Veronica seconds. And then I guess I'll turn it over to you, Lisa, to introduce this one.
Okay. So this goes hand in hand with the what we're looking to do with the next resolution, which is which would involve a charter change. So I'll back up and kind of start at square one. We had been talking when we had a vacancy in the position of Director of Office of Employment and Training. That was Jackie Muyesu, and Melissa Catchy is now the interim director. That the reporting structure for that office was a little bit convoluted, and it was due to the need for a firewall in reporting through the Department of Labor. So Office of Employment and Training currently reports to the HR department, though that staff as a department head attends department head meetings. It's not a direct report of county administration. And so we were looking to for a charter change to make that more straightforward. When Rosemary Avila left as the director of the Workforce Development Board, it also opened up an opportunity to look at restructuring the two departments to more closely align the structure of the two departments and more cleanly define the reporting functions, also to lead to greater efficiencies and hopefully be able to assist the departments in more clearly advertising their mission to the public under one Office of Workforce Development, and then having the Office of Employment and Training be one component of that, and the Workforce Development Board responsibilities be another component of that. So prior to Rosemary's departure, she came forward with this as something for consideration and a structure that is in place in other counties that has proven to be effective. And through the past few months, we've been having discussions with Christopher Spahn, who's the acting director of Workforce Development, as well as Melissa at the Office of Employment and Training. Chris has engaged the Department of Labor to ensure that all of the necessary firewalls are in place and that this new reporting structure meets with their approval. And essentially, if you refer in the packet to the organizational structure and firewalls, what this amounts to is one director for both entities and two deputy directors, one of which is already in place for the workforce development side, and another that would be in place for the Office of Employment and Training side. And really the impetus for this was to make a better logic for the reporting, but it also has the net effect of saving some county funding. And I wanted to point out on packet page 22, the resolution, the estimated savings in salary and fringe, there was an error there, and the estimated savings is $36,000 as opposed to the $130,000 in savings that was originally estimated, and that was just due to an error about a staffing position that we hadn't taken into account. So that's the larger piece of it. In order to put this into effect, it would require a charter change, which requires a local law and a public hearing to discuss this. And I'm happy to answer questions. Christopher, thanks for joining us, and Melissa's on the Zoom. Bridget has also been very involved in this.
So one of the things before we jump into discussion on this, because we do have the resolution to propose a public hearing, if we could close that out, and then we'll move to the next item and start discussion into that. So any discussion on holding a public hearing for this? No? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right. Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously. So, and I don't know why do we always order it this way in the agenda, Taylor? Okay. Next time I'll catch this one, because I feel like every time in the committee we authorize just flip it around. Because we should talk about if we want to pass it before we talk about the public hearing. So, see, we're learning. It's incremental steps. The next one we have, which is also related to this, is the resolution to adopt local law number B of 2023, a local law amending Article 27 of the Tompkins County Charter to implement restructure of the Division of Employment and Training, in parentheses, Office of Employment and Training, ID 11471. Could I have someone move that, please? Moved by Travis, seconded by Veronica. Now, the commentary that Lisa just provided pertains to this resolution. Christopher, thank you for joining us. I see Melissa is also here as well. If you have any additional items to add, or happy to open it up to the committee for questions and comments. Okay, no additional comment. From the committee, Mike?
So we're not adding anybody.
Correct. Use your mic.
Where's that 130,000 kind of coming from, I guess?
Yeah, so there actually needs to be an amendment, which I'll propose an amendment to this. And let me find the third whereas, 1, 2, 3. So this is going to be line 22. I would propose amending on line 22 the estimated cost savings of 130,000, replacing 130,000 with 36,000. And so I will move that. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Travis. Is that friendly to the mover and seconder? Is there any objection to that change?
Sorry, can you just say what it is again?
Yeah, line 22, as Lisa stated in her comments, the $130,000 estimate was incorrect. It's $36,000 is the estimate.
Okay, yeah, that's friendly.
Okay, friendly to you, Travis? Any objection to that change? Okay, so we'll make that change. So, Mike, now your question is on the $36,000. Where's that change coming from? And I guess I'll turn it over back to Lisa.
So on the workforce development side, there is a workforce development associate position that is not going to be filled. And there is a clerk position that is not in the budget that is going to be coming into the budget. So I think that the net cost savings there comes out to be approximately $36,000.
Ann?
So wondering, I don't know if you're able to speak to this, but how this affects the people in current positions?
We had a good lot of discussion about that, and the people, no one is going to be displaced by implementing this plan. For the most part, staff will maintain their current positions and titles, or will have something, if they're in interim acting roles, they will have roles to retreat back to, for which they qualify.
Yeah, please.
So then how will you determine who's the director? Do people apply for that? Or?
Yeah, there'll be a search. And this, and we put this because under the current, the way that it's currently structured, there's a staff that reports to Chris, and there's a staff that reports to Melissa. And the way that we wrote the resolution is that these changes won't become enacted until we do the search and the director is in place.
And you have to wait till after the law passes to start the search?
Yes.
At the process?
Yes, but we
Okay.
wanted to be clear when we went out to search and in the job description of what the role was and the structure of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be any future changes in offices where people are currently located? Do you anticipate that, or is that something you haven't really?
That was, no.
That doesn't
not.
seem like you need to do anything like about that. Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of this resolution? All right. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Lisa, anything else on the county administrator's report?
I think that does it for me. Thanks.
Okay, sure. We did have Planning and Sustainability Department, Commissioner of Planning and Sustainability's report. I see Katie is on here. Katie, I apologize. We put this sort of as a standing item, but we know in the future to, you'll let us know when you have an update for us. So if you do have an update or anything you'd like to add today, feel free, but otherwise, don't feel pressure to add.
Sure. I do have a few quick updates if
Great.
you
Yeah,
have
please.
time and want to hear them.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first one is that the round 23 of the Community Housing Development Fund closed in late February with a record amount of funding requests. There's going to be more to come as it works its way through the Housing Fund committees, but the total amount requested was just over $1.1 million. We have a total amount of funding available of $355,000, so it's going to be some difficult decisions and conversations among the committee members. Also, the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program that the legislature funded for $15,000 in this year's budget will be opening for applications from municipalities on March 20th and will remain open through September 25th. We've heard through the state grapevine that the CDBG housing funding round is likely coming out in May. So we're hoping that maybe some municipalities take us up on some of these funds to help them hire consultants to be able to apply for these CDBG grants. And I also just wanted to let this committee know, since you all deal with housing, that coming out of the PEAK committee and a recommendation from Randy Brown and Annie Koreman, our staff is planning on attending with the Chamber of Commerce to their event called Community Conversations in the town of Enfield on March 23rd. Our staff's goal is just to listen, contribute ideas, and we're going to bring along some maps and some housing and demographic data to contribute as needed or desired during the conversation.
Well,
That's it.
I appreciate it. That's fantastic. And Randy and Annie, thank you for that recommendation. Having attended one of those community conversations in Dryden, I found that to be a very valuable exchange. So hopefully the members in that community will appreciate that opportunity and your involvement there. So thanks for making that a priority and time for that.
Yeah, thanks to Jennifer and her team for inviting us along.
Great. Any questions for Katie? Ann?
I just wanted to clarify, it was probably Randy's idea, so thanks
Kudos
to
to
him,
Randy.
but I was really glad to hear that you're going to do it. I think it's, you'll hear some important things, especially since there's been some talk at the Enfield board meetings about some development there.
Great, thanks.
Mike?
Do we have time for an off-topic question?
Yeah, if you use your mic.
So I asked if we have time for an off-topic question. He said, yes, we do. And I figured since Katie was here and she was here yesterday at the floodplain discussion, I mean, what was your takeaway? Mine was bad, but I don't know what yours was.
It's a ton of information. I thought that FEMA and the DEC did an excellent job sharing that information. It could have been a 5-hour meeting easily to cover all the topics. I mean, it's some sobering reality about what those maps are and what it could mean for people who own and rent in the city of Ithaca in particular, but also some of our outlying communities. I will say our staff is participating with FEMA and DEC kind of on a debrief meeting tomorrow afternoon to share some ideas for clarifying kind of some of the points that they said, trying to have them bring more specifics about the cost of flood insurance and how those payments are made and how you find out about it. Because I think when we enter into the open houses in April, I think people will really want to know some dollar figures associated with what this really means. And if it makes sense for them to even consider, if they don't have a mortgage, whether they want to have flood insurance. So it's a lot going on. I do think also our staff talked with their staff after the meeting yesterday, and we are very hopeful that for the first time in New York State history, they might have 2 open houses and a remote version, because I think they were kind of overwhelmed by the interest in this topic and the number of people who came out to that meeting yesterday at the library that was really just for staff and public officials. So it wasn't even a full public meeting, and that library was packed yesterday.
Ann has a question.
I wasn't able to make that meeting yesterday, so I'm sorry. Is that recorded for us, do you know?
I don't believe it was, no.
Okay, well, if there's another open house, I'd definitely like to hear about that, and if there's any other further report through Peak, I'm sure I'll hear about that there, too. So thank you for attending.
Yeah, Katie, I appreciate that update. This definitely seems like a topic that kind of crosses that peak HED line, right, because of the implication it has from an environmental standpoint, as it relates to housing and affordability of housing and all that type of stuff in many parts of the community. So if you could just keep it on the radar to make sure that we're sharing information, and that just would be my only request on the topic, but appreciate the update.
Yeah, great. I will say Abigail Connor in my office is planning on bringing a presentation to Peak to the April meeting. So we could try to come back to HED in April as well, kind of preparing legislators for the public outreach that's coming in April.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Anything else for Katie, or Katie, anything else for us? All right, we'll let you get back to the Hollywood Squares there. And we'll, I guess the next item we have on our agenda is under tourism. Nick, if you want to make your way to the table, we have resolution award of 2023 Arts and Cultural Organizational Development Grants, ID 11480. If I could have someone move that, please. Annie, seconded by Veronica. I guess, Nick, I'll turn it over to you for
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, this is the resolution to award our 2023 Arts and Culture Organization Development Grants. We have 16 awards proposed in the resolution. They are for a total of $298,850. And I think it represents a really great cross-section of organizations that are doing excellent work in the community to really raise our profile as a destination for arts and culture. And yeah, would be happy to answer any questions folks have about the process and the results here. So,
Mike.
I was just wondering, are any of this grant money going for marketing, or is it specifically for like capital projects?
It's primarily for operations. If the closest to it usually get to marketing is like a staff person whose job is to do the marketing, not necessarily the ad placements themselves.
I just want to make sure I can vote on it. So that's cool. Thanks.
Just general operating support.
Correct.
Is how this is framed.
Yep.
Great.
Any other questions for Nick? Okay. Well, seeing none, I guess all those in favor of this resolution? All right, seeing no opposed, it passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Apologize for, excuse me. Sorry, if I could just take a second. Andy, do you actually want to introduce your resolution,
sure.
please? Yeah, apologize.
Veronica, do you want to?
Sure. So I guess we already added it to the agenda. Do we need
to move it?
I'll move resolution number nothing in support of New York State's Raise the Wage Act, New York State Senate Bill 1978A, New York State Assembly 2204A, ID number 11547.
I'll second it.
Any seconds that Veronica moves it.
Okay, great. So this is a resolution supporting a piece of state legislation that would essentially increase the statewide minimum wage in a graded fashion over the next 4 years and tie further increases to inflation. The impetus being that we know that minimum wage is below a living wage now. I've put in numbers that are applicable to Tompkins County specifically. Though in the bill, like the current minimum wage, the increases in the city will be higher than those for upstate. And this is timely given the record high inflation we're experiencing, but also just important for a lot of the crises of people, low-wage workers, not being, not making an income that's sustainable for supporting themselves and their families, coupled with the employment crisis we're in a lot of jobs, especially, there's some big overlaps such as in the healthcare sector with largely low wage, with like sectors that have a lot of low wage workers and also sectors where like we need people to do those jobs and don't have enough of them. There's also a really big like equity component around gender and especially race lines to this, in that like black and brown people, black people especially, are way more disproportionately likely to be making below a living wage. A lot of concern around like raising minimum wage to a living wage comes from like, how's it gonna impact employers, how are businesses gonna afford to pay for it, and so on. So I am really was glad to see we got back results from our countywide living wage working group research that they've been working on for the last like 4 years, and a big, if not like the biggest part of their research was interviewing they did interview employees, but interviewing employers in Tompkins County in predominantly at companies that are like in sectors where there is a lot of sub-living wage jobs, asking them if they would support living wage legislation and how could they make that work. And the vast majority are in support of it. And in fact, in the last few years, nobody changed their mind to oppose it. A bunch of employers have changed their mind to support this kind of legislation. And unsurprisingly, workers are in support as well. So there's I think most people want this, and I think that it would be helpful if we, the county, could make a statement in favor of this. This is not, I know we've been talking about a potential, or some people have been talking about a potential countywide living wage for a long time, so this is not that. This would be across the state, which honestly would be even better. Well, okay, it doesn't get up to a living wage immediately, but it
Approaches it.
It approaches it, would hopefully meet it in a few years. And one other bonus of it being statewide is it reduces concerns about funky stuff happening near county borders where, wages for the same job would be very different in close geographic areas. This would eliminate that issue. So I think it's great, and I hope that we can support it here and at the full legislature.
All right, well, my apologies for my coughing fit, and thank you to my colleagues for stepping in and keeping the ball moving. Appreciate it. We'll open this up now for discussion for members of the committee.
I'd like to add something.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah. So Veronica touched on most of the points. One of the things I wanted to add was, or to reemphasize, that during COVID, we really saw that essential workers are really essential, just to keeping us supplied, keeping the basic things in the economy, to keep things going, to make sure people could survive. Looking at those people, this is who this would affect the most. And as Veronica said, but she didn't say the exact time frame, but over the period of COVID, actually the support for increased wages has grown, and at the same time where unemployment, especially in this area, the rate of unemployment has gone down, so there's more of a reason for employers to want to pay more, because they need to pay more to get employees. So, I don't know if that makes sense. So these kind of things are all hitting at the same time and then converging with the cost of living. So this is, sorry for us getting this late to you, but this has to do with the state budget and things like that. So things have been fast moving. And the biggest thing is about indexing it to the cost of living, which many other states have already done, and New York State just hasn't done that yet.
Mike?
I mean, frankly, we kind of live in a great area economically. So, I mean, I'm looking at what you're asking for here, and frankly, a lot of the jobs, I was surprised at the one number you brought up, that 2 and 5 in Tompkins County don't make the minimum wage or something like that. I don't know what the number was, but I mean, I know, well, a living wage. I mean, frankly, I mean, the Dunkin' Donuts in Lansing is paying $18 an hour. I know that if you wanted a maintenance job in the school district, that pays 20. So I just thought that number was interesting, that many people are working below what you can actually make in this area. But that's this area. And there's a lot of areas of New York State that aren't doing that great. I also have a daughter. She works as an ice cream scooper at Scoops. I recommend it. Very good ice cream. $20 an hour would be a lot, frankly, for that position. I don't think that ice cream parlor would probably survive that kind of increase. I will also say that while I did like the home health care part of this, that is state money. The state, if it wants to, I believe should raise the salaries there. It doesn't need a minimum wage to say that. I mean, if you can't find people to work these home health care aides and we're the state, then yeah, you should probably boost the salary. The problem is, and it always has been, is there are certain things like Racker Center. I remember when they wanted to push the Fight for 15. They are state funded, and if you didn't increase the amount of money, Racker needs to come up with that to meet the $15. And if the state says no, they're in a rock and a hard place. There's no place for them to go. So I think this has a lot of unintended consequences. I think that's a very large increase. You're talking, going from $15 an hour to over 20. And then you're going to tie it to inflation. So this year alone, that would, if it was at 20 now, it would go up 8%. So that would go up $2, almost $2. So just some things to be concerned about. I mean, it's a much bigger issue, and I know that they do try to split upstate from downstate, which is why you have different levels. But yeah, I'm going to let the state handle this one.
Dan?
Yeah, cost of living is a little bit different than inflation. So, cost of living covers, inflation is more about goods, and cost of living is like taking in overall costs that people pay. So it's a little bit slightly different. I just also wanted to point out that this is co-sponsored by our state senators, State Senator Leah Webb and our Assembly member Anna Kellis.
Travis?
I am all for paying people more. What I am concerned with, and I think Mike brought it up a little bit. So with municipalities and counties, as you raise the minimum wage, and some people are already paying more than what's on here for 2024, who pays for that in the long run? Who pays for the raising of the minimum wage for counties, for school districts, for cities? And so here, the taxpayers are going to pay for that unless we reduce services, right? So if we're paying people more, we add more money to the budget, and that means that somebody's paying for it. So we're either going to reduce services, personnel, or raise taxes. And that's my only concern, is that somebody ultimately is going to pay for it when it comes to certain employers, and that will be the taxpayers. So that's my only concern, unless in New York, the state gives money to counties, municipalities to cover those costs. I know years ago when we did a living wage adjustment to the city would put that money into the department's budgets so the departments didn't have to take a hit to cover that, which was great. We were able to give people a living wage without reducing our services. So that would be my only concern.
I can address that a little bit, or do you want to? Go ahead.
You go for it, but I have another thing.
Okay, go ahead, Ann. Then Veronica.
So I believe, I don't think we have any minimum wage employees here at the county. Most of the employees have effectively a living wage here at the county, and then the few that we were aware of were at the Board of Elections, and we just indexed them to correlate, a few months back with the living wage. So for Tompkins County.
Right, but over
employees.
time, over the next few years, the minimum wage is going to go up, correct? So that means those folks' wages have to go up.
I would guess, though, who knows what will come, that the living wage will also go up because costs will also go up. And so as long as the county wants to remain a living wage employer, we'll be increasing anyway. My other comment, I don't know how this shakes up and who's a worker and who's a taxpayer, but a lot of the people that will be earning a lot of the money going into paying the higher wages is going to people who also live in this county. And so it's not exactly the same, but taxpayers have to pay more, but taxpayers are also earning more.
Well, if you own a home, right? So a lot of the people we're talking about aren't homeowners in the city, for example. So it's not going to necessarily affect them. I'm not arguing that this is a bad thing. I'm probably going to vote for it. I'm just saying my only concern is that, because I've seen how that works. I've seen how it works for nonprofits. I've seen how it works for small businesses. And Mike is right. Some folks end up going out of business because you have to pass that cost to somebody. Not everybody can just eat that cost. Not every business just makes enough to eat the cost. So I don't want to get into a debate of it. I'm saying those would be my concerns.
Sure, if I could address that too. So it wasn't, we didn't get a chance to talk to our chair here, Greg, or you folks, but the living wage study for Tompkins County just got completed. And we just talked to the folks last week about that. And then this came up, so kind of diverted us, but we would like to see if they can come and present that. It would have been nice if that was presented before, but we did take a little bit of information, but we'd like to see if that could be presented to us, so then we have that information, and it addresses a lot of the concerns. And I'm not saying everything would be fine for everybody, but they did look into, say, the benefits cliff, which is a huge thing, and things like that. So again, I wish that was before, but.
Mike, and then I have some thoughts.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure people understand. A move from $15 an hour to $20 an hour is significant in 4 years. That's a lot. I'm not saying it's too much. That seems like it's just a lot. You're talking $5 an hour per
For a full-time employee, for a full-time equivalent at 40 hours, that's an extra $10,400 of just payroll. That doesn't include your fringe percentage, right? So if you had another 25, 30, 40, 50% on top of that, it's a real impact, right? If you have 5 minimum wage employees, that's an extra $50,000, right? Plus. Where does that come from? Where does that come from? How do we pay for that ask, or how is that ask paid for? And that's one of my concerns. I'll let you answer that question, and I have some other thoughts.
I actually don't have an answer because I'm not an employer, but I guess I would go back to our living wage working group and ask of the 28 out of 31 employers that were in favor of going to living wage, what would they do or did they do? Also, sorry, you brought up Racker, which is a good example, because I know I'd heard they'd, because of their funding structure, had trouble paying a living wage. They are certified as a living wage employer now. I don't personally know what they did to make that happen. But that, if this legislation were to pass, sharing that kind of information and learning and success between employers, especially within a certain sector or within a certain wage setting reimbursement scheme or whatever, would probably be an important part of that, which, and I'd love to see if the county could help facilitate that, but that's down the road.
Yeah, so I guess my question was with the study, and I know that there are different thoughts on the study that was just completed, and I know there's definitely more than 31 employers in the county for sure, right? So, were they already living wage employers, right, that were sampled? What was sort of the makeup of that survey data to sort of validate, saying I want to.
We can send you the report.
Yeah, that would be great, because
But they try to target, I can answer that question.
Yeah,
They
go
try
ahead.
to target the ones that would be most affected by increasing it to a living wage. If they weren't going to be affected, the employers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of employers. I think you have to look at one of the things like wage compression. You have to look at what's the starting wage of an assistant manager at an organization, right? How does that, right? It has a lot of implications. I personally, I get behind the idea of being a certified living wage employer, right? I think that that's a commitment that an employer has a choice to make. I think when we look at minimum wages and mandated minimum wages, I have a little bit of a challenge with that, and especially a rapid growth, because I do think that this will have a dramatic economic impact on New York State, on our community, and I think that that's something that New York State, quite frankly, right now can't afford. It is a very expensive place to conduct business, and if there's employers that are willing to make that commitment, they should do that. But I can't see, and one of the things I struggle with too is how quickly we're sort of put in this position to make a decision with information like this because of a state budget timeline. And I think it's important if legislators want to speak out or speak for this, they do that. But there's a number of question marks that I have on how this would impact our community, how this would impact employers. I know that this was one study that was done. I know that there's other thoughts to the study, right? There's two sides to this conversation. So I don't think I can support this in its current state. And it's not because I don't want people to earn more. It's not because I don't want our environment and our economic environment and our workforce to be paid adequately for the work that they do and for the cost of what it costs to live here. But there's so many things that I think we could do as a legislature locally to help keep the cost of things lower. And until we're able to do some of those things and take those steps, just mandating that we raise the minimum wage is challenging, because $5 an hour over 4 years is a lot. And if that's not in revenue, that's coming from somewhere. And I know that there are small businesses within our community that have razor-thin margins. And this could be crippling. This could literally have so many unintended consequences. And I'm just not willing to put that on, just to put that out there before there's real debate within our community, within our committee, and within our legislature. And so that's kind of my struggle and my issue with this is I don't necessarily know if that study represents all voices in the community and the impact that it would have. And then also the only thing I have here is one of the whereases here, the Raise the Wage Act introduced in both the House and the Senate would increase the minimum wage. I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7th whereas. My interpretation is that those numbers are slightly off by 1 year, that it's $20 on and after January 2027. And this has it $20 in 2026. So I just think that those numbers, if I'm looking at the Senate bill correctly, I see $16 on and after January 1st of 25, 18 on and after January 1st of 26, and $20 on and after January 1st of 2027 for all other counties in the state outside of New York City and the downstate counties that are mentioned specifically. That's the page, Veronica. The green right below the red. You see that as well?
That is also what I see.
So if this resolution does move forward, we would just, I think we need to amend that to accurately reflect the timetable on page 4 of the Senate Bill 1978.
What we could do if it passes, we could, Taylor, if this does pass, could we amend that part? You know, just make sure we double check those numbers, because it does sound, cursory look, that might be inaccurate for which year they pertain to, but we could double check that. I wanted to say one more thing, that you had, you know, a couple people had spoken about, well, this place, they're already paying this, they're paying that, somebody's getting $20, $18 an hour, and that's part of the reason why that more employers are in support of this now, because they're already having to up the wages to compete. You know, my brother was getting $25 to entry level at Walmart, and they were kind of fighting. Target and Walmart were fighting. They just kept raising, and that was 2 years ago, so it might even be more now, just entry level coming in. And I did some calculations on, you know, $14.20, which is the minimum wage now for Tompkins County, and so that's $29,500 something dollars. I was going to just not say it, but yeah, $29,500 and something a year. And a lot of people, what happens when you're doing minimum wage is, or when you have jobs that are minimum wage, a lot of people are cobbling several jobs together for minimum wage. So they often, that might not be even an accurate number, because they're not getting paid when they have sick time. They don't have benefits at any of those jobs. They don't have health insurance. They don't have, you know, their kid's sick or their car breaks down. So it's not necessarily, that's working 50 hour or 52 weeks a year. So it could be less for some people. So just wanted to point that out. It's not much. And I don't know how much, you know, I would like to look at that more. I don't know how much more that we can do in Tompkins County to make things more affordable. I think this is one lever throughout the state, is to raise people's wages just a little bit, so those people that can afford to live here, especially, you know, when you see market rate housing going in all over.
And then I go to Veronica.
And this is just about the manifest correction. I think the bill attached is an old version, and the current version has the numbers I put in the resolution. Because the current minimum wage now in 2023 is $14.20. So I'm guessing maybe the original, it doesn't matter, but the number, the 1978A, which you can find online, I can email that to, is
so this is 1970. Okay. So yeah, you're probably
basically all the, those years, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027.
All got moved up.
All got moved by one.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. That's a good catch. Also, again, the challenge with these type of moving targets. Travis?
I have two questions, one for Lisa and then one for Veronica and Ann. I'll ask you out first, and then you could let me know why I ask Lisa. It's, and you may have said this already, is it too late to do this vote on the April 5th meeting, or whatever that date is, at our next meeting?
Right. they said if we can't do it now, they suggested we do it as a member filed at the legislature. With the budget and everything, it's going to be too late, probably.
Okay, so Lisa, one of my questions, and you may not be able to answer this right this second, and this is part of the problem with me thinking about how I would vote. Given the fact that this moves up so quickly over the next few years, is the county and the county's contracts, the county raises, the step plan, is the county prepared to deal with compression? Because you're looking at somebody at the minimum who might be a part-time person over the summer at DPW making 40 grand a year. And you may have somebody who is a roster person not making much more than that with a lot more responsibility. And we get into this idea of compression. And so in fairness to everybody involved, all employees, would the county be prepared to deal with that compression issue over the next few years?
It would raise that issue, and there are titles now between the $16.61 and $20 rate that would be affected, and then it would, so it would be something that would need to be looked at and addressed.
Okay. Those are the type of issues that make it challenging for me to say yes in this moment. I don't know if the county, as the legislators, are prepared to deal with. That's a lot of raises. That's a lot of increases in salaries, which I'm cool with. But again, who's paying for it?
How is it paid for? Yeah. If there's no objection by a member of the committee, Jennifer Tavares, who is the president of, or CEO of the Tompkins County Chamber. What's the title, Jennifer? Both president and CEO, in charge of the local Chamber of Commerce, who reports to this committee. If there's no objection from the committee, she has a question or hand raised. I'd like to give her a few minutes to maybe weigh in. All right, seeing no objection, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was waiting to see if there were objections. Thank you. So this is a really complex issue, and I agree with a lot of the things I have heard said in terms of, what all of our goals are related to people being able to afford to live and work in Tompkins County. I would just caution us of one of my big concerns, and again, I know this is a state policy, whatever you choose to do today will have effect or not have effect depending on the extent to which anyone at the state is going to defer to this resolution. But that study, as a member of the working group, I have expressed to several legislators, some of them have already had something from me in their inbox for several months, the way in which some of the information from that study was shared back to the county, and frankly, the actual sample size that we're referring to here. So the really important thing I think to clarify right now is we're talking about, if we're going to refer to that study and say employers said they want this, two things. 40 employers were surveyed. They were hugely disproportionately already living wage certified employers based on the total number of employers in Tompkins County and who is living wage certified in Tompkins County. And so 1.8% of the total employers in Tompkins County were provided an opportunity or were participating in getting feedback on that. And what they were giving feedback on was not, should minimum wage increase to $20 an hour over 5 years? It was, should living wage be a policy in place? And the dollar amount considered at the time, the living wage estimate at the time is $15.32 an hour, and there was some assumption it might go up to 16 something an hour. But the questions they were asked were pertaining to an entirely different scenario than what you're talking about right now. And so I think it's really important to just say, we don't have anywhere near enough data if we really want to understand how this is going to impact all types of employers in Tompkins County. A real study would need to be done, not just 40 employers. And I just really, for me, the big thing is like, this could be hugely impactful. Greg, your numbers were very good because I came up with 10 grand a person per year over that time. And that doesn't address wage compression. Wage compression was also handled and explained to the people at the committee meeting I was watching a few months ago in a very not thorough manner, and I think it was done in a very dismissive way. And I would just caution us that we need to more deeply understand wage compression and what that might cost employers and how that plays out before making any assumptions around what dollar an hour is feasible for people. That study was about feasibility, and the sample size was really small. And again, it was an opinion from a very small group of employers. So. And the other final thing I'll just say is that we know, because we've asked folks many, many times, that a whole lot of employers in Tompkins County have already increased their wages. Annie, you made a comment about this. The market has come up considerably. People are already paying more. I doubt there are many employers anywhere near minimum wage in Tompkins County right now. So a big question we always ask when we ask people how they feel about this issue is also, what are you doing right now? What are you paying people? What are your entry-level wages now? And that data is also really important for us to understand. So anyway, thanks for giving me a few minutes. I think revisiting that study at some point and making sure more legislators see it is important, but I think it's also important that other perspectives are brought to the table and that we potentially work on gathering some more data. So thank you.
Thanks for your perspective, Jennifer. And I think it's important when we have this conversation, it's not just the impact on employers, it's also the impact on employees. And so I want to make sure that there's a balance in that conversation, that we not focus, just on the employer impact, but also on the employee impact, which I think is the root of this. But I think for me, there's too many variables and too many open items and too many loose ends on how this will play a role and what this will impact for us in the county. I would be more than happy to have more in-depth conversations and have folks be a part of the conversation and really roll up our sleeves on this issue and make sure that we have good, solid data and information. But for me, trying to advance this right now, it's just not possible in my mind. But I am willing to commit to doing the work. If it's here, if it's in WDIC, wherever that may land, happy to be a part of that. I guess I'll open it up to any other final comments, and then just looking at the time, we do need to move forward with this if there's no further discussion. Any closing thoughts, Travis?
I mean, I do think this is big enough to move forward and hear from more of the legislators. And Lisa, I don't know if there's enough time between now and the next meeting, and please say no if there's not, to do any sort of rough numbers or estimate or whatever that it would cost the county, so people could understand over the next few years what this looks like, the bigger impact. Because I think that's important while trying to take care of folks in our community who deserve more, what the impact is and who it impacts. I think that's important information to have for something that's this big of a deal.
Lisa?
I could look into see what that might take and let you know one way or the other.
All right, I guess we'll call this one to a vote. All those in favor of this resolution, raise your hand. All right, say we got that. All those opposed? All right, 3-2, that will move out of committee and go on to the legislature. So we are at 4:59. The last item is the continuation of our 2023 committee goals and beyond. I'm going to just make a quick comment on that. I think there's a lot of issues in this committee that may not be solved in a year, but we can have incremental steps towards. And we need to have a fuller look at what we're addressing, how we're addressing it. And I think, you know, the charge of the committee and the groups that report back to us set the tone, obviously, for what we're going to look for. But I think over the next couple of months, as we get into some issues, we need to maybe flag some things that say, you know, yes, this is something we can achieve this year. Let's try to focus on that. If folks have thoughts on things that are specific to this year or beyond, that's why we sort of put committee goals for this year and beyond, raise those, right? What are some real actionable, tangible items, right? Not just check off the conversation on housing or check off the conversation on economic development. But what does that really mean, right? What are some metrics in which to judge those goals by? And one of the reasons I've been slow to start or slow to wrap up the committee goal conversation is because I really want to make sure it's something that's actionable and measurable rather than just sort of aspirational. And so I guess I would leave you with all of that as we run out of time here today. Please think about in the areas that are interesting to you. If it's a living wage, minimum wage conversation, right? What does action for Tompkins County and our committee mean? If it's number of housing units or supportive housing or economic development, job creation, whatever the case is, what are some things we can put on, and how does it tie back to, as Katie and Megan will remind us, right, our, the plans that we've already adopted, the documents that we already have in place that help guide our departments, that help guide the legislature's priorities. And if we need to revisit any of those, let's do that as well. But I guess I would sort of put that out there. We didn't have a lot of time because we had some additional guests today, but if we could maybe try to really give that some consideration and share some thoughts via email on what we can do this year and what we can do in the next few years, that would be helpful to the process. So I'll leave it at that. If anybody has anything else to add, now's your shot. If not, if there's a motion to adjourn, we'll adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All right, looks like there's a motion by Travis, second by Mike. Seems like everybody's in favor, so have a nice night, everybody. All right, take care. Thank you.